Family, how goes it? Now, am I audible right now? Because we always have to have a discussion about the volume, about the visuals. How is everything right now? Give me a give me a thumbs up or some apples and milk. Audio sounds great. Good. Stephen, I think I've seen you active in the Discord. I appreciate that. Perfect. Okay, good. Good news. So this is a short chapter, but it is probably the most it's definitely the most painful chapter that I've read yet. I don't know how many of you are reading ahead, but this one, I read this one mostly, with my hand on my face like this. So look, I mean, we're gonna have to start with a recap. It's been a little while, and this is gonna be a quick chapter. I've got a dentist appointment after this, so pray for me. Um, but yeah, I think every 2 weeks we're probably going to get back to the book. Every 2 weeks, on Mondays likely. Um, so as a quick recap, in the previous chapter, I think it was lunch with coworkers, right? Winston sits with Sim, who's a philologist working on the 11th edition of the Newspeak Dictionary. And Parsons, the dull, enthusiastic neighbor, you remember you went to his neighbor's house to fix the plumbing, and Parsons wasn't there. Sim's explanation of Newspeak, right? Sim is intelligent but very ruthless. He's like the scariest guy in the book. He's completely devoted to the party, not unlike Boxer was when we were going through Animal Farm. So he explains that the purpose of Newspeak is not to expand language, but to destroy words. We also had kind of a conversation about how we felt like words were being destroyed, especially when it comes to political debates. A lot of words get thrown around that don't really mean anything except I don't like you. Um, Words being kind of emptied of their meaning. We're going to get into that a lot in this new chapter too. So, bear with me. And so essentially they're narrowing the range of thought until thought crime becomes literally uh impossible. There's this chilling line in the last chapter. Orthodoxy means not thinking, not needing to think. Orthodoxy is unconscious, essentially saying that they're all going to become automatons, right? Um, Parsons was kind of the opposite. He was like stupid but loyal, kind of exactly the kind of person that the party favors. He's proud that his children are spying on neighbors. Um, but the themes of that chapter is number one, language as control. Newspeak shows how narrowing language narrows thought. The fate of the intelligent, right? Being too clever or curious is dangerous under the party. Remember, Winston thought Sim knew too much and that eventually he would be arrested for that. Um, and then, mindless loyalty versus dangerous awareness. Parsons thrives because he's stupid but loyal, and Sim will perish because he's clever but honest, right? And so, with that, let's dive into chapter 6. Guys, there's so much here. There's a lot. This one gets deep. This one is like, okay, yeah, this is dark. So buckle up. Winston was writing in his diary. It was 3 years ago. It was on a dark evening in a narrow side street near one of the big railway stations. She was standing near a doorway in the wall, under a street lamp that hardly gave any light. She had a young face, painted very thick. It was really the paint that appealed to me, the whiteness of it, like a mask, and the bright red lips. Party women never paint their faces. There was nobody else in the street, and no telescreens. She said $2. I For the moment, it was too difficult to go on. So the first thing that I recognized there was that Winston's writing style in his secret journal shows noticeable improvement, right? Compared to his earlier entries, his words have become clearer, more confident, and they're a lot less fragmented. Remember in the first chapters, his sentences would like trail off and collapse into the slogans of the party, right? Which kind of reflected his fear and his confusion and the party's grip on his thought. Now, by chapter 6, like his writing has really sharpened. His entries show a more sustained narrative and more deliberate reflection. So what this is a sign of is that the simple act of journaling is already reshaping his cognition. Guys, if you're not somebody that journals, I highly, highly recommend it. Like for me, I'm trying to embody virtue ethics, and it's really difficult. And so for me, um, what I have to do at the end of the day is journal like where I missed the mark on the virtues. Um, but journaling, man, it is just one of the fathers of habit building. And so you can see him getting so much better and seeing his cognition improve as he journals. Like this is just a already a far better entry. By putting words to forbidden memories, Winston is kind of reclaiming some of the clarity of thought that the party worked so hard to erase and destroy. So when he describes the prostitute that he once visited, he's writing both in a blunt way and kind of an oddly analytical way. He admits that the woman's makeup was applied too thick, like her appearance is kind of trashy rather than alluring, yet the very mask appeals to him. It reminds him of femininity, not genuine intimacy, but at least the echo of it, right? So he interprets her painted face as a crude attempt to simulate beauty and provoke desire, you know, a last vestige of kind of a natural human strategy, right? The attempt to win loyalty through physical attraction. And that's been erased in his in his world. For the moment it was too difficult to go on. He shut his eyes and pressed his fingers against them, trying to squeeze out the vision that kept recurring. He had an almost overwhelming temptation to shout a string of filthy words at the top of his voice, or to bang his head against the wall, to kick over the table and hurl the ink pot through the window, to do any violent or noisy or painful thing that might black out the memory that was tormenting him. Your worst enemy, he reflected, was your own nervous system. At any moment, the tension inside you was liable to translate itself into some visible symptom. He thought of a man whom he had passed in the street a few weeks back, a quite ordinary looking man, a party member, aged 35 or 40, tallish and thin, carrying a briefcase. They were a few meters apart when the left side of the man's face was suddenly contorted by a sort of spasm. It happened again just as they were passing one another. It was only a twitch, a quiver, rapid as the clicking of a camera shutter, but obviously habitual. He remembered thinking at the time, that poor devil is done for. I love that line that Winston he says he says the worst enemy was his own nervous system. That's kind of powerful, right? And from modern neuroscience, you guys know I'm a cognitive science nerd, and stress physiology. It teaches us essentially that this is right, right? Chronic stress and cognitive dissonance and constant vigilance, right? They wreak havoc on the body and the brain, right? Um, in effect, your stress systems are meant for short bursts of adaptation. But in a regime that has constant threat and tension, those threat systems remain activated and begin to physically damage your body and your systems. So that's true. That's very scary, but true. And what was frightening was that the action was quite possibly unconscious. The most deadly danger of all was talking in your sleep. There was no way of guarding against that, so far as he could see. He drew in his breath and went on writing. I went with her through the doorway and across a backyard into a basement kitchen. There was a bed against the wall and a lampshade on the table. Sorry, and a lamp on the table, turned down very low. She, his teeth were set on edge. He would have liked to spit. Simultaneously with the woman in the basement kitchen, he thought of Katherine, his wife. Winston was married. He had been married, at any rate. Probably he still was married, for so far as he knew, his wife was not dead. He seemed to breathe again the warm, stuffy odor of the basement kitchen, an odor compounded of bugs and dirty clothes and villainous cheap scent, but nevertheless alluring because no woman of the party ever used scent, or could be imagined as doing so. No one in the party ever used scent, or could be imagined as doing so. So, I mean, what do you think that means? It's just that he's no one in the party uses scent. Like they don't I mean, like using perfume or using cologne, um, it's something that that's alluring. It's something that's in certain circumstances polite. Like when I worked at, jobs and had like a, 9 to 5 job, I would spray something on. But the party can't use scent. I guess it's just that much fear of displaced loyalty. There shouldn't be anything that allures somebody to maybe want to offer you any piece of loyalty at all. Brenda says all of their senses are being controlled, right? Isn't it like crazy the amount? Sandy says you can stand out from others. Maybe, yeah, that's a really really good point. There's no way that you should be allowed or able to stand out from others. Maria says, I think maybe to erase a sense of self. Yeah, that's a really good point. A lot of times, like people, I would like know them by their scent. Like my grandma, my mother, right, my wife, like just very very distinct scents that kind of let you know where you. I mean, and scent is kind of tied to nostalgia for me. I don't know about for you guys, but when I smell something, that like brings me back. I can go all the way back to elementary school whenever I cut grass, you know? So scent has a really, really powerful way of kind of reminding you of things. Nobody in the party ever used scent or could be imagined as doing so. Only the proles used scent. In his mind, the smell of it was inextricably mixed up with fornication. When he had gone with that woman, it had been his first lapse in 2 years or thereabouts. Consorting with prostitutes was forbidden, of course, but it was one of those rules that you could occasionally nerve yourself to break. It was dangerous, but it was not a life and death matter. To be caught with a prostitute might mean 5 years in a forced labor camp, not more, if you had committed no other offense. And it was easy enough, provided that you could avoid being caught in the act. The poorer quarters swarmed with women who were ready to sell themselves. Let me ask you guys this, and this is a really it's kind of a strange thing, right? Since we're here, right? What is sex work in a society a sign of? Is it a sign of liberation or slavery or something in between? Because a lot of times I hear that like sex work is like being accepted or being is like, oh, this is liberation. This is what women used to be held down from doing participating in this kind of thing, but it doesn't necessarily seem to breed a lot of happiness or fulfillment. Depends on who you ask. I think that's fair. Someone says poverty, slavery to the economic divide. Oldest profession in history, Rachel. Yeah, you might be right. Someone said despair. At this part, Orwell gives us an unsettling mirror to modern culture's degradation of intimacy. And it's kind of especially relevant when you think about what's happening with things like OnlyFans. Hear me out, right? So there are reports that estimate millions of young women and girls. I think it's somewhere like between 5 and 10% of Gen Z women online have experimented with or joined platforms that commodify themselves, right? So exact numbers are difficult to pin down. But the trend is real and it's growing. And what's kind of striking is how willingly so many embrace these platforms as the frontier of liberation. Like this is liberation, right? Look at there's a OnlyFans and you have people making money. You have I think a 19-year-old, she turned 19 and then made like millions and millions of dollars on OnlyFans. Crazy. And it kind of equates sexual exposure and performance with freedom. But what's kind of crazy is Orwell in this book, that remember that dictum, freedom is slavery, kind of cuts deeper than we often allow. Because as they free themselves to display, sell, perform, they kind of become bound to the marketplace, to the algorithm, to attention metrics, and to kind of the hollow promise that visibility will equal some kind of validation. And in that exchange, we kind of risk losing real intimacy and real self-worth and real belonging, right? Uh, I mean, look, I mean, if I turn 19 and I could make $1 million on OnlyFans, I would do it. I'm not that attractive. Uh, look, tacitly, no, some could even be purchased for a bottle of gin with the proles, which the proles were not supposed to drink. Tacitly, the party was even inclined to encourage prostitution as an outlet for instincts which could not be altogether suppressed. Mere debauchery did not matter very much, so long as it was furtive and joyless, and only involved the women of a submerged and despised class. The unforgivable crime was promiscuity between party members. But though this was one of the crimes that the accused in the great purges invariably confessed to, it was difficult to imagine any such thing actually happening. The aim of the party was not merely to prevent men and women from forming loyalties which it might not be able to control. Its real undeclared purpose was to remove all pleasure from the sexual act. Not love so much as eroticism was the enemy inside marriage, as well as outside of it. Guys, what do you think that means? The party doesn't want to destroy love so much as eroticism. What is the difference? What's the difference between love and eroticism? Its real undeclared purpose was to remove all pleasure from the sexual act, not love so much as eroticism. Stewart says, "What's love got to do with?" Shout out to Tina. Love might be like the duty part of it, and eroticism is like the fire, like the attraction, the and love might be the duty, right? It's like I loved my daughter when I brought my daughter home from the hospital. Kat said $10 super chat so I don't have to sell my biscuits on only. People want these biscuits, guys. I'm not going to sell them yet. I'm not that hard up yet. Thank you for that. That was hilarious. That's great. I love it. Um, love, not love so much as eroticism. So when I brought my daughter home from the hospital, sorry, I got something in my eyes. Um, when I brought my daughter home from the hospital, I loved my daughter, but the love wasn't because she did anything for me. She was just pooping, peeing, and looking with her bug eyes all over the, she was just, I gotta, but I had love, and that love was attached to duty. All right. It's like, I have a duty. Um, but my love for my wife there's always been kind of a romantic thing. There's something underneath that's different. And so maybe that's the difference between love and eroticism, right? The party wants is okay with you feeling like you have a duty, like to raise your children, right? You have a duty to, like, work and to provide for this family. But as long as there is no loyalty exchange, as long as number one loyalty goes to the party, um all marriages between party members had to be approved by a committee appointed for the purpose, and though the principle was never clearly stated, permission was always refused if the couple concerned gave the impression of being physically attracted to one another. The only recognized purpose of marriage was to beget children for the service of the party. Sexual intercourse was to be looked on as a slightly disgusting minor operation, like having an enema. Got it. This again was never put into plain words, but in an indirect way, it was rubbed into every party member from childhood onwards. There were even organizations such as the Junior Anti Sex League, which advocated complete celibacy for both sexes. All children were to be begotten by artificial insemination, ArtSim, it was called in Newspeak. Stewart said, keep your enemas close. All of these could be merch. These could all be like, I would rock a hat that says keep no, I wouldn't. Keep your enemas closed. That'd be crazy. You don't do that. Uh, this, Winston was aware, was not meant altogether seriously, but somehow it fitted in with the general ideology of the party. The party was trying to kill the sex instinct, or if it could not be killed, then to distort it and dirty it. Listen to that again. That's really important. The party was trying to kill the sex instinct, or if it could not be killed, then to distort it and dirty it. Guys, by stripping sex of joy and tenderness, the party can eliminate the possibility that it could create genuine bonds of loyalty between people, right? Love is a competing allegiance, right? If I my favorite definition of love is from Rupert Spira, my favorite phenomenologist. He says love is the felt recognition of our shared being, right? I love that definition. Love is the felt recognition of our shared being. And that creates an allegiance when you love someone. In our own culture, we kind of see a different but strangely parallel distortion. So the West doesn't ban sex. Instead, it kind of drowns us in commodification, hyperexposure, and performance. So between porn addiction, dating apps, uh, you know, swipe based consumption, and in platforms like OnlyFans, sex kind of becomes cheap and detached from love and more transactional, right? And the irony is that both extremes, like both the party, the enforced frigidity, and our culture's over sexualization produces the same result, right? Intimacy is eroded, loyalty between individuals becomes weaker, and people are essentially left isolated. So Orwell's vision kind of warns us that whether through repression or through distortion, once sex is stripped of its sacred connective dimension, people are just far easier to control. And I think that it's true, right? Like if you remove from sex the one kind of ingredient of owing to the person you have sex with um some kind of allegiance, then it's like, yeah, it's like your allegiance is free to other things, namely the state, right? The party was trying to kill the sex instinct, or if it cannot be killed, then to distort it and dirty it. He did not know why this was so, but it seemed natural that it should be. And so far as the women were concerned, the party's efforts were largely successful. He thought again of Catherine. This is his wife, guys. He thought again of Catherine. It must be 9, 10, nearly 11 years since they had parted. It was curious how seldom he thought of her. For days at a time, he was capable of forgetting that he had ever been married. Imagine that. For days at a time, he's capable of forgetting that he had ever been married. That means that there was few things memorable. Imagine that. There's nothing memorable in my marriage, so I sometimes just forget. I forget that I was married, almost like I forget the last time I filled up my gas tank. There's nothing memorable about it, right? That's crazy. They had only been together for about 15 months. The party did not permit divorce, but it rather encouraged separation in cases where there were no children. Catherine was a tall, fair headed girl, very straight, with splendid movements. She had a bold, aquiline face. What is an aquiline face? She had a bold, aquiline face, a face that one might have called noble, until one discovered that there was, as nearly as possible, nothing behind it. Very early in their married life, he had decided, though perhaps it was only that he knew her more intimately than he knew most people, that she had, without exception, the most stupid, vulgar, empty mind that he had ever encountered. Bars. Roasted. So this is kind of unfortunate, right? She's a beautiful woman, and for all other things being equal, she would appear, I guess, externally to be. But I mean, she just has this empty mind. This is the most stupid, vulgar, empty-minded individual that he had ever encountered. So when Winston calls his former wife, when he recalls her, he admits that she's pretty and even moved with a kind of grace, but her mind is empty and she kind of lacks the warmth or maternal instinct that naturally fosters attraction. Listen, don't kill me here. Don't kill me. All right. I'm just saying, look, I mean, in George Orwell's world, don't at me. If anything, at Orwell. Okay. This is no accident. The party has deliberately hollowed women out, stripping them of the traits which would typically inspire affection, loyalty, or family bonds from men, because those bonds would compete with loyalty to Big Brother. The result is a woman who might look feminine on the surface, but has been trained to be sterile in her spirit. Our own culture echoes this dynamic in kind of a different way. Genuine femininity. I mean, and hear me out here. Listen. Don't kill me, okay? Because we're getting into the waters. Of course, we're reading 1984. How could we not get into controversial waters? So, pardon me. Our own culture does echo this dynamic, right? Genuine femininity, nurturing softness, or maybe, God forbid, the desire to raise children and cultivate home is increasingly shamed or dismissed. Stay at home mothers are often ridiculed as wasting their potential if they don't pursue careers, as though mothering and homemaking were not demanding, noble, or meaningful work. I mean, listen, my wife is a stay-at-home mom, and without her, I wouldn't be here doing this. Right? We got to shout out some of those stay-at-home moms. And look, the consequence is eerily Orwellian. That's the reason I bring it up. Women are encouraged to kind of trade their natural gifts for identities that serve economic or ideological systems rather than family or community. From time to time, this happens. So just as the party in 1984 drained Winston's wife of qualities that could make her a partner, our own culture risks draining women of qualities that once rooted our society in love and in home and in stability. Um, And shout out, 100% shout out to the women who have careers. This is not anything against career women. Listen, please, please, please. It's Orwell, but this is the way I feel. Um, all right, continuing. This is talking about Winston's wife. She had not a thought in her head that was not a slogan, and there was no imbecility, absolutely none, that she was not capable of swallowing if the party handed it out to her. The human soundtrack, he nicknamed her in his own mind. Yet he could have endured living with her if it had not just been for one thing: sex. As soon as he touched her, she seemed to wince and stiffen. To embrace her was like embracing a jointed wooden image. Jeez. And what was strange was that even when she was clasping him against her, he had the feeling that she was simultaneously pushing him away with all her strength. The rigidity of her muscles managed to convey that impression. And listen, guys, at, at- on one hand, he is roasting her, right? On one hand, he's saying, look, his wife, before they party, he just remembers her being stupid and vulgar and empty-minded, but I think that us seeing her as kind of this foolish, silly, seeing her that way should transform into sympathy when it gets to this part, right? Imagine being someone who is under the tyranny of an oppressive regime who thinks that your loyalty should be only to the party, even when you're engaging in sex, right? And it says about her that even, this is during sex, right? Even when she was clasping him against her, he had the feeling she was simultaneously pushing him away. The rigidity of her muscles managed to convey that impression. She would lie there with shut eyes, neither resisting nor cooperating, but submitting. It was extraordinarily embarrassing and after a while horrible. There was a French philosopher named Simone Weil, and I was studying her yesterday. She died at 34 because like she starved herself to death in solidarity with the poor. Like she was that serious. Brilliant philosopher, by the way. She had a philosophy of attention. If anyone wants to look up Simone Weil, and she had not only a philosophy of attention but a philosophy of affliction. And she says something interesting about affliction, that when a group of people are afflicted, they've come finally to believe, they believe the oppressor, right? So what the oppressor says about the afflicted can start to believe about themselves. It can kind of damage your spirit, and it's more than self-esteem, right? But what's unfortunate about this woman, about Winston's wife, is that this rigidity, right? Um, she feels that she owes absolutely everything to the party. She's bought into it. And so she's minimized herself, right? And so she has to submit. She has to like fight with all of her mind not to experience any pleasure, even during sex. So she's just caught in this perpetual turmoil. It's a very, very scary chapter when you think about it. Um, but she would lie there with shut eyes, neither resisting nor cooperating, but submitting. It was extraordinarily embarrassing and, after a while, horrible. But even then, he could have borne living with her if it had been agreed that they should remain celibate. But curiously enough, it was Catherine who refused this. They must, she said, produce a child if they could. So the performance continued to happen once a week quite regularly, whenever it was not impossible. Okay, I'm glad that line is there, whenever it was not impossible. And I remember thinking when I got to this part when I was studying for this, is how is sex possible? Like if he's living under these conditions, like how do you actually do the act if you're this doesn't completing sex like require some kind of being turned on? Or I mean, maybe for a man, you can just go so long without it that you inevitably can perform. It's just a very, very horrifying situation, this chapter. Um, so the performance continued to happen once a week quite regularly, whenever it was not impossible. She used even to remind him of it in the morning as something which had to be done that evening and which must not be forgotten. She had two names for it. One was making a baby, and the other was our duty to the party. Yes, she had actually used that phrase. Quite soon, he grew to have a feeling of positive dread when the appointed day came round. Guys, what is it that they can't say? Well, she's saying, it's time for, making a baby, or it's time for our duty to the party. What can't be said that's being substituted for those phrases? I'm going to let you say it so that you don't get at me. Okay? What is she trying to say? Love, making love, right? What is she saying? She cannot say the word. She there's a series of words that just have way too much emotional connection so that she substitutes it for making a baby or our duty to the party, right? Kat says same thing that happens to some couples trying to conceive now. Ouch. Yeah, maybe. Um Look, the parallel I think is striking. In 1984, Winston recalls that his wife, Katherine, never spoke of making love or even sex in natural terms. Instead, she says, making a baby or doing our duty to the party, right? But the party had successfully stripped intimacy of warmth and humanity, which reduces it to a bureaucratic function of the state. Language itself was weaponized to kind of hollow out meaning. The act was not personal. Sex is not affectionate. It's not unifying. It's been rebranded as a mechanical duty. I happen to think that we see something eerily similar in the modern West, right? Terms like birthing people or chest feeders or people who menstruate, reducing womanhood to biological processes, abstracting away the beauty and dignity of femininity itself. That disturbs me, right? Those phrases, kind of like the party slogans, kind of attempt to flatten and depersonalize what is inherently human and rational and maybe sacred, right? So just as Catherine could only frame sex as making a baby because the party demanded utilitarian language, our culture is moving toward language that divorces women from their identity, leaving only their functions. And that's really creepy. I think we should avoid that. Quite soon, he grew to have a feeling of positive dread when the appointed day came round, but luckily no child appeared, and in the end, she agreed to give up trying, and soon afterwards they parted. Winston sighed inaudibly. He picked up his pen and wrote. How is he expected? Wait, sorry. I started reading my own notes. Sorry. So he picked up his own pen again and wrote. She threw herself down on the bed, and at once, without any kind of preliminary, in the most coarse, horrible way you can imagine, pulled up her skirt. I He saw himself standing there in the dim lamplight, with the smell of bugs and cheap scent in his nostrils, and in his heart a feeling of defeat and resentment, which even at the moment was mixed up with the thought of Catherine's white body frozen forever by the hypnotic power of the party. Why did it always have to be like this? Why could he not have a woman of his own instead of these filthy scuffles at intervals of years? But a real love affair was an almost unthinkable event. The women, ugh, yikes. It just occurred to me that that's a bar. George Orwell has bars, right? When he says, but a real love affair was an almost unthinkable event, it's not only almost unthinkable because that's not allowed by the party and because you'll get, arrested if you're caught showing love, but it's also because the words don't mean anything anymore. There's kind of a double reason why it's unthinkable. But the women of the party were all alike. Chastity was deeply ingrained in them as a party loyalty. By careful early conditioning, by games in cold water, by the rubbish that was dinned into them at school and in the spies and the youth league, by lectures, parades, songs, slogans, and martial music, the natural feeling that had been driven out of them. His reason told him that there must be exceptions, but his heart did not believe it. They were all impregnable. 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 Okay, I just want to make sure I had that right. They were all impregnable, which is an ironic use of language, right? Impregnable, because his wife was physically impregnable, but he's talking about mentally. Everyone was impregnable mentally, right? And to be mentally impregnable means that it's impossible to inspire you, right? It's impossible to inspire you. Um, there's no sign of beauty. There's only slogans, only loyalty. And what Winston wanted, more even than to be loved, was to break down that wall of virtue, even if it were only once in his whole life. The sexual act successfully performed was rebellion. Desire was thought crime. Even to have awakened Katherine, if he could have achieved it, would have been like a seduction, although she was his wife. But the rest of the story had got to be written down. He wrote, I turned up the lamp when I saw her in the light. After the darkness, the feeble light of the paraffin lamp had seemed very bright. For the first time, he could see the woman properly. He had taken a step toward her and then halted, full of lust and terror. He was painfully conscious of the risk he had taken in coming here. It was perfectly possible that the patrols would catch him on the way out. For that matter, they might be waiting outside the door at this moment. If he went away without even doing what he had come here to do. Man, what a line. If he went away without doing what he had come here to do. Guys, that's called the sunken cost fallacy, right? It's when you say, "Well, I've already come this far, I might as well do it." Right? How could I not do it? I mean, I've spent so much energy doing this, right? It's like I've already spent the money. I've already signed up for it. I've already, you know, that's the sunken cost fallacy that you have to do something just because you've spent a lot of time preparing to do something, or when people won't change their opinion because they've felt that way for so many years, they've poured so much time and thought into it that they can't change their mind just because they've dedicated so much time, so much attention, so many resources. I've lost friends over this, right? How could I change? And so he's saying, look, I've risked being arrested. I've risked being uh, you know, caught by the party. How could I not go through with it? It had got to be written down. It had got to be confessed. What he had suddenly seen in the lamplight was that the woman was old. This is the prostitute. The paint was plastered so thick on her face that it looked as though it might crack like a cardboard mask. There were streaks of white in her hair, but the truly dreadful detail was that her mouth had fallen a little open, revealing nothing except a cavernous blackness. She had no teeth at all. He wrote hurriedly in scrambling handwriting. When I saw her in the light, she was quite old, 50 years old at least. But I went ahead and did it just the same. He pressed his fingers against his eyelids again. He had written it down at last, but it made no difference. The therapy had not worked. The urge to shout filthy words at the top of his voice was as strong as ever. So, everything about this woman exposes her inability to offer the connection that he's seeking. Rose said, "Oh my God, 50 is old." No, 50 isn't old, but 50 is definitely older than he was looking for in a prostitute. She had painted her face to look younger, and she was in dark light. But when she was finally exposed in full visibility, he noticed that she was she was older than he would have liked to. You don't want to have this kind of encounter with someone old enough to be your mom. But everything about this woman kind of exposes her inability to offer the type of connection that he's seeking in this moment. Um, her age, first of all, her price. Guys, remember at the beginning of this, she said $2, right? You remember the way that she and I'm sorry to kind of go back into the vile chunks of this chapter, but I mean, look, I mean, the insights are the insights, right? The way that she hikes up her skirt when he says that, in the most what way did he describe it? Um, yeah, she threw herself down on the bed and at once, without any kind of preliminary, in the most coarse, horrible way you can imagine, pulled up her skirt. And what does he mean that this is the most coarse and horrible way you can imagine? What he means is that he is seeking the illusion of someone who really cares about him. He wants a genuine experience of warmth. That's what he's chasing. And this woman is just a well-seasoned prostitute. Like she's about her business. She's like, "Yo, pay me. Let's get this thing done." I don't have any illusions about what I'm not shy. He's looking almost for the illusion of shyness. He's like, "I just want this to feel real." Right? And he's kind of playing Russian roulette for genuine connection. Hmm. Wow. Guys, that's the end of the chapter. And the chapters here forward are going to be relatively short. I wanted to share something with you from a book called The Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis, which which I think is a perfect there's a perfect quote in Screw Tape Letters that encapsulates this chapter. And if you don't know what that book is about, then it's important that I let you know what it's about. C.S. Lewis was a brilliant author, completely brilliant, in my opinion. And he wrote a book about two demons. So one demon is named Wormwood, and the other demon is Uncle Screwtape, and that's Wormwood's uncle. So Uncle Screwtape is a well-seasoned demon, and he has he's a veteran demon. He's a lot of souls are in hell because of this senior demon named Screwtape. And Wormwood is just a little junior league demon, and he's trying to convince his first soul to go to hell. And the Screw Tape letters are letters from this junior demon to this senior demon asking advice on how to tempt human beings. So it's a phenomenal book. But I wanted to give you a quote from it that I think really does justice to this chapter as a whole. So check this out. Now, this is from the perspective of a demon. This is what a demon is saying. And guys, thank you so much. Thank you so deeply for the super chats and the memberships. I'm going to read those afterwards, and they help so much. So I thank you so much for sending those in. Now, imagine a demon saying this, right? It's funny how mortals always picture us as putting things into their minds. In reality, our best work is done by keeping things out of their minds. All the delights of sense, from the most innocent to the most depraved, are from the enemy. And by the enemy, he means God, right? Remember, this is a demon talking. We only twist them. We want cattle who can finally become food. He wants servants who can finally become sons. We are empty and must be filled. He is full and overflows. Our aim is not an excess of happiness, but the extinction of it. An ever increasing craving for an ever diminishing pleasure is the formula. To get the man's soul and give him nothing in return. That is what really gladdens our Father's heart. Right? And by our Father, he means Satan. What's crazy is the Screw Tape Letters is a perfect book to read alongside 1984 if you want to be fully and thoroughly depressed. Because the Screw Tape Letters has a lot of doublespeak, right? In Screw Tape Letters, when they say our Father, they mean Satan. When they say the enemy, they mean God, because they're demons communicating to each other about how to win over humans. Fascinating, fascinating book, and gives you so many keys um, into how temptation looks, from the perspective of the tempter, let's say, I guess. Um, So, Cat Smith, I'm looking at the super chats right now, and guys, I really really appreciate it. Cat says, so I don't have to sell my biscuits on OnlyFans, guys. After this, I was about to start my OnlyFans. Right after this live, I was starting my OnlyFans to sell those biscuits. So I deeply appreciate that one. Um, Aristotle or Plato, thank you so much for the super chat. Deeply appreciate it. The memberships, Phantom, you are goated, sir. Um, Thank you so much. Dia said, I missed this. Love the book cult. The book cult is crazy. I love that. Sandy, thank you so much for the gift membership. Ron said, I've missed this community. We're going to be, um, we're going to be, I think, every other Monday. So it'll probably be like the day after Wisdom School. Wisdom School in Spokane meets every other Sunday. And I think that the following Monday I should be ready. And I mean, we might go back to every Monday because the chapters are getting so short now. But man, the work that has to get put in, and for to kind of prepare these things, it's more than you think, because I'm somebody who doesn't like to necessarily fly completely off the cuff if I don't feel ready. That's I'm not a full blown perfectionist, but Carol, thanks so much for the super chat. Maria, thanks so much for the super chat and for communicating in Discord so often. I see you in there a lot, so thank you. GG, yes, my guy. Thank you for the membership. Just a tiny gift, but huge thank you. Thank you, Nikki. I deeply appreciate it. Anuta, fries. Anuta gave me fries as emoji. I've never gotten fries emoji before. I don't know how to feel. And Phantom, for a replacement armrest. It hasn't fallen off yet. It's stable. It is a little rickety. My armrest is a little rickety for how often I slap it. Guys, is there any questions? Is there any concerns? This was a very, very deep chapter. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I know some people were kind of worried. It's like, yo, is this done? Especially new people who, because there are certain people who never catch a live. There are people who never catch a live, that they're always just like waiting for the next one. And so like, is this done? Are we just finished? No, I would never not finish a book. Um, Reaction to Welcome to the Internet was funny. Welcome to the Internet is still blowing my mind. Bo Burnham is he's something else. Joanne, thank you so much for sharing the Discord. I'm gonna pin that. That's pinned now for anybody who wants to join our Discord community. I was thinking about starting a clubhouse community. Um, I know that a lot of you guys aren't on Clubhouse, but I so would rather communicate this way as opposed to like text communication. So I apologize for everyone who notices that I've been absent from the Discord, but I'm not. Look how fat my fingers are. You see how fat these fingers are? You think I can play guitar? You think I can do anything? You think I can like, one of the how I resonated with Bo Burnham is the Pringles can thing. You think this fist can get in a Pringles can, buddy? Not in the slightest. I got big dummy mechanic hands. And so texting on the Discord is just not my cup of tea. I would rather just blabber off at the mouth. I want more vocal rooms where I can just communicate like this and just have talks, and so that I can hear people's voices. And I know that that's not necessarily fair because not everybody wants to communicate in this way, but it tends to be easier for me. Twitch is easier. I've never had a Twitch. Fandom says Discord does voice messages, my man. No excuses. That's true. But we don't have a lot of voice rooms. Like, do we have voice rooms? I mean, I know we have like the stage and everything, but I want rooms where like people, like you're just like in there, you're in the room with a bunch of other people, and that they're exposed and you can see their history. That last part was a little much. I could investigate Twitch. I mean, look, guys, ask Phantom and Joanne how difficult it is. Like Phantom has spent probably 8 hours helping me to even get my microphone working on some of these platforms. I am so dumb when it comes to technology that even I'm floored that you guys can see or hear me now. It's completely otherworldly to me. And I'm way older than I look. I'm telling you, like, I'm 39 years old. My birthday was this month. And that in my family constitutes being a senior citizen because we don't live that long. I have awful genes. Awful. I have awful, awful genetics. If I live to see 72, I'm like top tier old in my family. Hang on one sec. Ruffs, thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate that, sir. The laugh at the end made me put a chill down my spine. The laugh at the end of at the end of Welcome to the Internet. Something's wrong with Bo Burnham. In a good way. You know what I mean? So, but I mean, he's one of those guys that is like I really, either he's the most phenomenal actor in history, or he's like really, really going through some stuff. As far as like an artist, Bo is and I love how he like brings the audience in, like we're a part of the art and part of the problem. Guys, as far as breakdowns, like I'm looking for like what else, because I was introduced to Tool by this community. And that has been one of the most fun journeys. Thank you, Joanne. Yeah, I feel old. When I wake up in the morning, I hear popping sounds. usually at the knee and the ankle. React to Ironic by Bo Burnham. I didn't even know he had that much music. It would be so dope to just do a live one, but it would take me 15 years to figure out how. Kat said, I'm a baby. I appreciate that. You know, Plato said 40 is the age you should begin philosophy. I think in the Republic is that, yeah, before you are 40 years old, you're essentially a puppy. You're using philosophy as like a plaything, like a sword that you're fighting with. So I think when I hit 40, I'll really start, you know, the insights will really start banging out at that point. Ooh, wee. The Sound of Silence from Disturbed is a good match for 1984. Because I wish I could pull up. You know what? I'm gonna learn it. I'm going to bug some of my people and learn how to actually do a live reaction. Would you guys show up to that? You guys would show up to a live reaction? Oh yeah, the yeses definitely have it. See, I wish I could do that now. I wish I could pull up now. Guys, I'm gonna do that now if I can figure it out in the next half an hour, which I definitely can't. I know I can't do it in this live, but I'm gonna end this live stream so that the people who want to come back and listen to this chapter don't have a giant uh, video. So, guys, I deeply appreciate it. Have a fantastic day. I love you all, and I'll see you next time.